We are back in Gotham Knights, and I thought we'd go over some tips and tricks to help you become the next Batman. Some of it will be more basic tips, while others will probably be things that you didn't know since the game doesn't really tell you a whole lot. But as usual, leave your tips and tricks down in the comments. In a lot of open world games, it's beneficial to go around and do side missions or whatever else the world has to offer, but for Gotham Knights, you're probably going to want to do the story first before anything else because it's by far the fastest way to level up and unlock suits or really anything. The story only takes about roughly 7 to 10 hours to complete, and you could probably do it even faster if you're skipping cutscenes or going straight for that case file, but that is by far the fastest way to level up, as well as farming enemies in some of these weird situations you get into, like here where the laser drill needs to be fixed and progress is stalled so that enemies keep flowing in. You could easily farm these guys, but it's really not necessary since you level up quick enough through just doing case files. There's also New Game Plus, which amps up the max level of 30 that the base game caps out at all the way to 40. While doing these main missions, you're going to also want to check your knighthood challenges as well as the momentum challenges and do those ASAP, as they completely change the game by granting you the ability to glide or fly, except for Robin, whose traversal is extremely underwhelming. But nonetheless, you should swap through each character and complete their knighthood and momentum challenges each time that you have to go back to the Belfry, because it also gives the best abilities and skills available. Red Hood possibly being the best character to main because of his high damage abilities. I mean, pretty much every character has their uses. I usually main Batgirl. I really like Robin's staff and the way he fights, and then obviously you had Red Hood with the guns. The challenges give you certain enemy types to defeat, so once these enemies are introduced in the story, you should focus on those as soon as possible. Just get everyone's knighthood and then focus on a specific main if you want it. What I would do is go into the training area at the Belfry and finish up that challenge for each character, which is fairly straightforward and always the first challenge that shows on the knighthood screen, and then head out and do missions until I clear out enough of that enemy type, because you need to do this separately for each character. The challenges that you'll probably have the most trouble with are the Momentum Court of the Owls challenges, where you need to defeat these annoying Talon enemies or clear an owl's nest. A lot of this can be done by simply following the story, except for the nest, which obviously is one of the red crime markings on the map. So make sure you're switching characters at Belfry once you get those completed. Like I said, the momentum abilities are extremely useful, as well as you can acquire up to 4 bars, except for Knightwing, who can unlock a 5th bar, and each one is granted to you for every 5 levels. So at level 20, you should have your 4th momentum bar. Although it's annoying traveling around without a piece of traversal gear such as a glider, while you're grinding out each character's challenges, you can get around rather easily by just holding jump while grapple hooking. So just hold X on PlayStation, which will allow you to get around much faster than the more robotic movement it usually gives you. I actually stopped using my bat cycle a lot of the time after I found this out. Definitely do not sleep on elemental damage, especially freeze. I wasn't real focused on elemental at all because I thought it just sucked, but it turned out that what I was using just had a really small elemental effect buildup, which can also be brought up by mods to deal much higher damage than what you're used to getting. I find freeze, fire, and electric damage to be the best, but either way they usually deal a good chunk of damage, especially if you pay attention to enemy weaknesses. That's why it's good to sometimes carry gear for each element, as you'll notice some of your weapons do very little damage on specific enemies. That's likely due to the fact that you're using the wrong type. That, or you're now level 20 and haven't switched out your weapon since level 12. To know if you're using the correct weapon type, just look at the color of the damage numbers that you're dealing. If it's gray, you're not really doing much damage and you would definitely benefit from switching over to something else. Fire is obviously good against ice, but usually like 90% of the time it's good against anybody. Same goes for electric and freeze. The concussive element that makes enemies dizzy is just as dull as it sounds and usually not worth your time. You should save some lower level mods that you have in your inventory, because if you're fusing mods together, the mod's level will turn into whichever mod has the highest level, so you can combine 3 level 6 mods with a level 20 and it'll turn into a new level 20 mod. And if you combine mods of the same color, it turns into the next highest rarity, so you can combine these 2 tips to make sure you have as many powerful mods as possible. Just make sure you don't do something like combine a purple with 3 white rarity mods, because that will just downgrade the heck out of your mod into an uncommon. Those mods can be extremely useful, which is why it's important to look at the amount of mod slots available on your suits and weapons rather than what you're used to doing, which is just looking at its level or rarity. You can make gear way better if you're able to slap 4 mods on it. The game makes you feel like white colored crimes are useless and don't hold a lot of meaning other than getting clues, because it doesn't show them at the end of the night, but they totally do count, and even count towards trophies because they're the easiest to grind and drop tons of mods and gear also. The easiest way to get legendary crafting materials is to do the higher difficulty premeditated crimes where you hunt down some of Gotham's most wanted, which are those very high rated difficulty crimes. This is also the best method to getting legendary and heroic weapons and suits. Enemy drops, the crates, and the rewards you can see on the menu are extremely good gear, and it makes sense since these are the harder crimes you can complete. But you'll end up seeing a lot more higher end gear in your later levels, and these become obsolete quickly at lower levels anyways, so you'll likely want to spend a lot more time defeating these most wanted criminals after leveling up a bit. Another easy way to get higher tier suits and weapons is to loot Batman's secret caches that he has spread across the map. Although it may be beneficial to wait until you're a higher level, otherwise the dropped gear becomes useless pretty quickly since it does scale to your level. But I mean, if you plan on playing New Game Plus to get even stronger, you could grab these again during your next playthrough, since that's the only way to get to level 40 anyways. And using this menu that pops open once you hit the touchpad on PlayStation is so much easier than the one that's brought out at the full menu that you get for holding the touchpad, which allows you to easily track missions. It's especially useful when a case gives you a specific task, such as interrogating a specific faction, such as a freak or a regulator. If you click View Challenge, it'll actually show that exact faction's territory on the map. Only specific enemies can be interrogated, by the way. If you're pressing triangle or Y, or whatever key PC uses, and it's not working, you're probably interrogating the wrong person. Sometimes they'll even run away during a fight and you'll have to chase them. They're usually the much weaker looking enemies. If you don't enjoy solving puzzles, because there's a ton of them in Gotham Knights, you can go into your settings and toggle on CSI Assist to make them a little easier. This is probably fairly obvious, but the game doesn't ever tell you that you can use ranged weapons to distract enemies. I also like to aim in and snipe the mini bosses with shields in the head to do way more damage than those quick shots do with ranged weapons, and they're much harder for the enemy to block. It boosts the damage a little bit for aiming down sights, and then even more for a headshot. Bonus objectives are good if they're not too difficult, but not worth going for if you have to go out of your way for them most of the time. So don't restart for them like I used to. A lot of the time you'll have a bonus objective for something like stealth, you'll go for a takedown, but it happens to be the same button as the grapple, so now you've alerted the enemies and then you quickly try to defuse the bomb, but that's also the same button as mantle, so you mantle over the ledge, and now all of the hostages are ground beef. The bonus objectives are good if they're easy to complete because of the extra materials that you get, but more of the time not worth the hassle since a good portion are stealth based, which the stealth in Gotham Knights can be incredibly annoying to deal with. You don't get XP for kills on cops or security guards, and in the majority of cases, even in missions can just run past them and save time. Sometimes the game will force you to defeat the ones in the area, but it's pretty rare, so just run past them and let them go home to their families. You also get just about the same XP no matter if you or your teammate gets the kill. It seems to go down somewhere around 10% from what your teammate gets sometimes, maybe depending on distance from them, but technically you could go AFK for a bit and let your teammate level both of you up if you're busy, as long as it's not too difficult of enemies, since the enemies do scale up to a harder difficulty when there's two of you. If you're facing Talons, I like to spam strong ranged attacks to stun them while my buddy deals most of the damage. This is an easy way to get rid of them since they are extremely annoying to deal with sometimes. As soon as you get the ability to talk to Lucius Fox, head to him and begin his drone mission, because doing so will allow you to begin unlocking fast travel points across the map, which will help you save a ton of time. I spent the majority of my first few hours driving around Gotham just to find out later that there was fast travel available, which I could have been unlocking along the way since I was already at the upper portion of the city earlier. All you'll have to do is scan for drones, which should shine gold and will either be flying around or landing on the charging pad, which you can then scan after it drops its shield. But that's pretty much it. Leave your additional Gotham Knights tips and tricks down in the comments. See ya.